The Galactic Council's chambers echoed with the chittering laughter of a dozen species as Ambassador Kanat stepped forward, his weathered human face betraying no emotion. Behind him stood Malice, her dark eyes scanning the alien delegates with the calculating gaze of a seasoned military engineer. "Honored delegates," Kanat began, his voice cutting through the mockery. "Humanity requests permission to join the Galactic Defense Initiative." The laughter intensified. Zixithera, the crystalline representative of the hegemony, spoke first, her voice like wind chimes in a storm. "Human, your species has been among the stars for barely a century. Your ships," she paused, consulting her datapad, "are constructed primarily of steel and combustible materials. Primitive chemical rockets, really." Commander Veltar of the Korthax Empire slammed his forearms against his desk. "We've seen your vessels, human. Clunky, slow, and they leak atmosphere. The Devourers would tear them apart like tissue paper." Mally stepped forward, her hand resting on the datapad containing humanity's ship designs. "Perhaps you'd like to examine our specifications more closely?" The Altarian delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline matrix, flickered with amusement. "Child, we've already analyzed your technology. Your largest warship carries weapons that would barely scratch our shields. Your nuclear explosives are quaint." Kanat's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "We understand your concerns. However, we believe humanity can contribute to the galaxy's defense in ways you haven't considered." "Such as?" The question came from Quinata, the insectoid queen speaker whose species had been spacefaring for millennia. "Ingenuity," Malice replied simply. "Adaptability, and a particular talent for what you might call unconventional warfare." The chamber erupted in renewed laughter. Even the usually stoic Vardani were clicking their mandibles in what passed for their version of mirth. 3 months later, the laughter died. The Devourers struck without warning, their biomechanical swarm descending upon the rim worlds like a plague of living metal. The hegemony's crystal ships, beautiful and deadly, shattered against the adaptive hulls of the enemy. The Korthax Empire's mighty dreadnoughts, powered by exotic matter and armed with reality-warping weapons, found their sophisticated targeting systems overwhelmed by the chaotic swarm tactics. Within weeks, 7 star systems had fallen. The Galactic Defense Initiative was in full retreat. In the emergency session, panic filled the council chambers. The same beings who had mocked humanity now scrambled for solutions as reports of devastation flooded in. "They're adapting to everything we throw at them." Veltar roared, his usually pristine uniform scorched and torn. "My fleet's quantum torpedoes worked for exactly 1 engagement before they developed immunity." Zixithera's crystalline form had lost its perfect symmetry, stress fractures running through her structure. "Our harmonic weapons disrupted their formation briefly, but they learned to counter the frequencies within hours." It was then that Kanat stood, his expression as calm as it had been during that first humiliating meeting. "Honored delegates, humanity would like to offer our assistance." The chamber fell silent except for the low hum of alien breathing apparatus. Quinata's compound eyes fixed on him. "You have 43 ships, human. 43, we've lost thousands." "Numbers," Malice interjected, "aren't everything." Commander Veltar laughed bitterly. "What could your primitive vessels possibly accomplish that our advanced fleets could not?" Kanat activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. The star map showed the advancing Devourer swarm, their bioships represented as pulsing red masses consuming everything in their path. "You fight them like they're a conventional enemy," Kanat explained. "You try to out-tech them, outpower them. But the Devourers aren't just another spacefaring civilization. They're an infestation." Malice stepped forward, her fingers dancing across her control pad. "And sometimes when you have an infestation..." The display changed, showing human ships approaching a Devourer cluster. But these weren't the same vessels the Council had dismissed. These ships moved differently, their hulls scarred and modified beyond recognition. You don't fight it with precision. The human ships suddenly exploded, not from enemy fire, but deliberately. The explosions weren't nuclear, weren't quantum, weren't exotic energy at all. They were simple, crude, and devastating in a way the elegant alien weapons were not. "You burn it out," Malice finished. The display showed the aftermath. Where the Devourer swarm had been, now there was only spreading fire. Actual fire, somehow burning in the vacuum of space. consuming the biomechanical hulls that had proven immune to every advanced weapon the galaxy could muster. Zixathara's voice was barely a whisper. How? Kanat's smile was grim. Magnesium, phosphorus, thermite, and a few other compounds your species abandoned millennia ago in favor of cleaner weapons. The Devourers can adapt to energy weapons, quantum distortion, even reality manipulation, but they've never encountered deliberate, sustained combustion on this scale. Your ships, Quinata said slowly. They're not warships anymore. No, Mollis agreed. They're bombs. Delivery systems for the most primitive, brutal, effective weapons in our arsenal, fire and chemistry, and we have 42 left. The silence stretched until Commander Veltar spoke, his voice filled with something between horror and awe. You turned your entire fleet into suicide weapons. Not suicide, Kanat corrected. Sacrifice, there's a difference. Our crews evacuated to automated fighters before impact. They're already preparing the next wave. The Altarian delegate flickered uncertainly. But your ships, your infrastructure, can be rebuilt, Malice interrupted. Your worlds, your people, they can't. For the first time since the war began, hope flickered in the chamber. But it was a terrible hope, bought with fire and fury. 3 days later, the tide turned. Not with elegant plasma cascades or quantum torpedoes, but with crude chemical fires that the Devourers' adaptive biology simply couldn't understand or counter. Human ships, loaded with compounds that galactic civilization had discarded as primitive, carved burning wounds through the swarm. The galaxy had laughed at human ships. They stopped laughing when they realized that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Sometimes primitive meant unstoppable, and sometimes when extinction was the alternative, fire was the only answer that mattered.